say that, but see, the thing is, at this point, some of these ICs that should be like
Hey,
30
guys.
cents are now like $30.
Our speaker's up.
Don't I know?
Our speaker's gone.
The bill of materials now really is a very significant bill.
As someone that assembles.
So how'd you like the first session?
Are we online? Are we online?
I feel.
We've been on YouTube for the past 20 minutes
Okay, great.
with nothing to show. I've been trying to text France, and my machine won't text France. Or I don't know how to do French phone numbers. It could be both.
Yeah, okay. But we already had one done, and the manufacturer decided that they weren't going to produce them anymore. Right? Okay, no big deal.
Oops.
There's tons of these things out there. They're like 30 cents a pop. Well, the last thing
Now
was
they're
bought by
like
some
30
bastard in China.
Yeah.
Sharing screen.
And he basically said, "Oh yeah, you can have them. Check by 100,000 bucks on. By the way, I'm charging you $3 a piece."
So there was a CPLD that Mouser had 11,000 of in stock on a Friday, Monday morning. All of it.
Let's see if we can actually broadcast with everyone chatting. Let's see here. Let's switch over to there. All right. So we're trying to get the morning speaker dialed in. If you've been watching online, we had just a very brief, although I don't know if you guys saw that, a brief flash in and out of our remote speaker for today. So we're continuing to, we're continuing to work on getting everything connected up for the morning.
a requester, and you can click which version you want to set as default. As soon as you do that, this version is going to be default on your system, and you can use it without even resetting your machine. This is a pretty simple script. It doesn't check which versions of GCC are installed, and the reason is because it is just a DOS script. I didn't want to make it overcomplicated. It's not so necessary. So you know which versions you installed. You know which one you want to make as a default, right? You click, and that creates all the. This actually creates some link files in the GCC in the SDK folder.
So it's just hard links or soft links, right? It's not like
Soft links.
It's not like renaming files.
No, it doesn't change the files. It just creates soft links. Actually, it just creates a GCC, let's say, a link file that points to the version that you chose.
Selected. Right.
Yeah.
So that way you could be normally compiling under 8.
Yeah.
And then you decide, hey, I want to compile a version for the table. Click on 6, hit recompile. You come up with this table specific version, save that off to the side, click back to 8, keep on working.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to use multiple versions of GCC without doing all this stuff, you can also use GCC-6, for example, and you have GCC6. Or use GCC-11 or G++-11, and you have that version. All these are working. And one of the goals of having all these GCC versions was to make them work in parallel, right?
Then,
Like many are used to from Linux or Mac OS or whatever other systems that they use different versions of this.
with all the different compilers, obviously 6 is there for the sake of the SPE support. Between 8, you said 8, 10, 11, 9 also, or not?
No, not
8
9.
and 10. Are there certain benefits to using either 8 or 10 or 11, or reasons to use one or the other?
The most benefit is the biggest benefit is to have available the latest version, right? We all want to have the latest version. So 11 is there, but 11 and 10 were not tested that for so long. They are tested in many different projects and big projects by the community, and most of the problems are fixed, but there might be something that is missing. Okay. But 8 is released in our community for more than 6 years.
Right.
So it is well tested.
Very mature.
Yes, exactly. And so I prefer to have 8 in that package for that reason, and to give the opportunity to everyone to experiment, let's say, with the newer versions. If my plan is in the next versions, if we see that everything works well and no problems are out there, we can stick with the latest versions only. But I was thinking about the scenario like, okay, if you include only 11 and 11 has a problem, then a developer what has to do? Or go and fix that problem and make his own compiler and then use that, or he has to try and figure out a way to include the GCC8. So if you have that there, let's say like a fallback solution, okay?
Right.
If something goes wrong and you need a GCC that is well tested in our community, go and use this version. It doesn't make too much. It doesn't take too much of space. Let's say, okay, we are going to remove 8, but we are going to save 150 megabytes of space. It's not something like that.
Right.
So for me, it makes sense, especially because if you remember 53.34, the previous version of the SDK, was coming with GCC4 yet. which is a big leap from that version to 8 and 11. There are some changes that happened between this version 8 and 11 for GCC that might influence the compiling of some code for some people. So it will be better for now to have all these versions, and then we can say, okay, we can remove 11. We can remove 8 and stick with 11 only. It's not a big problem.
Do you think one compiler versus another makes either more compact or better optimized code? Or, for example, I was under the impression that 11 had some features to it that might help porting foreign code to the Amiga to make it easier to port, that they had certain aspects of the compiler that would support.
If you have the latest version, you can gain some benefits from the optimization of the latest version of the GCC, right? And you can get some more informative output from the GCC based on what you are compiling if you have some issues in your code. GCC 11 is giving you more information about this is not set correctly, or we have that some warnings, which might be helpful because by that you might find fix bugs that you didn't have a clue about that. So yeah, for me, it's better to use the latest version for me, if possible. But lately that I started with the project that has to do with the WebKit, it is recommended to use GCC 9 and above, okay, for that project, which is a huge project, right? So I don't think that what you can do with 11, you can't do it with 8, GCC 8. You can do it just fine. Okay. There's no barrier so that you can say, okay, I need 11 or GCC 12 to go with that.
So we talked earlier about CodeBench. Have you tried it? It all works good at CodeBench?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's just calling GCC straight,
exactly.
So whatever you have set, it just works.
Yeah, exactly, because the way that CodeBench works with the SDK, and because we didn't change anything in the SDK, the structure and the commands, it works out of the box with our project. Cool. And then any project, any application that uses the installation of the SDK works out of the box.
So now all we need to do is Rigo. Hello, Rigo. We need a new update.
A new update of of the CodeBench. It's much needed. Yeah, and of course, more developers to use the SDK. Also, I forgot to mention one thing. We updated most of the, if not all, the examples that are in the SDK.
Yeah, OS4 example code.
Example code, cool. Which is and remove obsolete calls to the API and things like that. And we show exactly how it's the optimal way to use the new stuff. We fixed a few bugs that were in the previous SDKs. And also we included again the scheduler that this comes, of course, from Steven's team, the exec team, that had to do with the scheduler, and you couldn't compile the add tools with the previous SDK. Now this is fixed, and everyone can build their own GCC versions. And
so you guys got it so that all the example OS4 GUI examples and all that are compiling without errors now?
Yeah, without errors,
without warnings. I knew a bunch of them compiled with warnings, errors, but it was a learning experience. You get it, and you're like, okay, how do I fix this? Okay, I'll spend a weekend trying to figure it out.
Yeah, because I think that if you have an SDK and you promote it for users to use it, and you want to show them the good way that you need to program and create things, if you have their obsolete code, that's a good thing. And also we changed things that had to do with the DOS commands and examples that dealt with the DOS commands a lot.
You also included the AmiSSL.
The latest AmiSSL SDK, absolutely. AmiSSL always came with the SDK, and it has one example in there.
Right.
And we have also the latest Magic User Interface SDK included.
Okay.
And what else? Yeah, pretty much like that. We had some discussions to include more and more stuff, but libraries and things like that. But there was a decision that we don't need to make the SDK huge, and not everyone is going to use it. And
Isn't bigger better?
no, not always. Not always. And yeah, we decided to
You'll
not
never make it
not
as a
go.
Windows developer. I'm telling you.
Yeah. You know what I would like to have a tool, a terminal tool in the SDK, and you can say, okay, I want to install library care, or I want to install, I don't know, the OpenSSL or whatever, the JPEG library.
Right.
Okay, so you can run install this, and you can have that. Maybe sometime. That's one of the ideas that I would like to have into the SDK. Or this will be helpful that you can have the minimum SDK and then say, okay, I want to install this C12. Boom.
Right.
That's that will be quite useful. One step at a time. One step at a time.
The documentation that's included with the current SDK, those headers and the autodocs are against what, the release version of?
That's the latest version.
Update 2?
Yeah. No.
Or even further?
Even further.
So it includes stuff from the current beta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It includes information from the new lib 5380.
Right.
5380 was released a couple of weeks ago through AmiUpdate,
Yeah.
so everyone can use it.
But what about the DOS SDK? Because there's been Colin's done quite a bit of work on DOS since Update 2 came out.
I think, if I recall correct, the latest version that we had up to April, that was quite tested on the beta test team, is in the SDK.
I'm just worried about the possibility of autodocs included with the SDK, not necessarily reflecting what's available in the public libraries.
The public
the public,
Because everyone who's a developer for the platform is almost inevitably a beta tester as well.
Yes.
However, I was just curious about that.
I don't recall quite well right now the version, but I think that even if you release something that in the SDK and the API is much newer than what you have in the public, you give the opportunity to the developers to create things that use that or prepare for that. Now, when this is going to be released by Hyperion, I don't know yet, but we push. I'm pushing to have things released.
Okay. The other question I had for you was, you remember SpotOut used to have an AmiUpdate database for SDK components, particularly including things like shared objects and so forth that were released by third parties.
Yes.
That was a hugely useful tool for folks. Is there any possibility that people on the SDK team, which I think right now is probably just you, but is there any possibility that that will be a model for the future, so that instead of downloading 360 megabytes, we can download, like when expat, the library gets updated, we can download the new includes and documentation via any update?
Most of the applications and libraries, like expat, for example, when you download the latest version, they include the SDK. And if you have the SDK installed, then they are installed right now. I don't see why we can't do that. I truly believe that if we can have the minimum SDK package and the needed tools for people to use them, it will be just fine, and then install anything from AmiUpdate or whatever. But the thing is, and that's my perception, that some people don't know that, okay, I need a profiler, what I'm going to use. Okay, you need to go to OS4 depot and try to find a profiler or whatever. Or even you don't know that you need a profiler for a specific problem to be solved. That's the role of the SDK, to provide you all the needed tools to start developing and to create an awareness of what tools are out there, and also promote the work that people do it.
Like Profiler 1.1, for example.
Yeah, which is great, and the Hieronymus that was updated after so many years.
What about debuggers at this point? Because GDB still has some significant issues on our platform, and I don't know that anyone's actively working on that. Alkill had, what's his new debugger? It's GUI based. It's pretty good.
The Spotless.
Debug 101 or something?
Yeah.
And the Spotless. Those is Debug 101 and Spotless that are created by Alkill, and they are not right now quite mature to say that, okay, go and use that because that's the best solution out there. It is the best solution, but it's not quite mature yet, so to be included in SDK. So I didn't want to provide tools that are not completed. Okay, and the other way to debug is with GDB. There are some issues with the X5000 that were, as much as I know, solved by the XXG team.
They are.
Yeah, but are not yet released to the public. They are in beta testing. So if this is released, we are going to have a GDB. From my side, what I would like to see is more tools to come out, or even if we can create something like remote debugging, having your OS4 running beside you, and from another machine with Linux or whatever, you use the IDE from there and debug the code from the...
Right, because right now without GDB, we don't really have a good tool for doing address space exploration. So you're trying to find, as you travel along some linked list to some variable where it's actually physically stored and what... You understand what I'm saying? So
yes.
And at least on my machine at home, it's broken. I can't really use it for a lot of stuff. So
you can't.
I can do it for basic. I can set breakpoints, and I can do some basic. But I can also use printf for that sort of thing.
Yes.
So
yes.
The things that I need GDB for, unfortunately, right now is it's not stable.
Yeah.
Or it gives me wrong results. It'll actually read the wrong. It does very funky things. So okay, but somebody's actually. It sounds like it was a kernel issue rather than a GDB issue.
I'm not sure if it is a kernel.
It's always going to be here. We didn't test it.
Yeah. When he comes, we can have a fight with him.
We have the costs and
And but they did the work, and they.
He's on an airplane right now. He won't hear what we say.
So we can say whatever we want.
Exactly.
The work is done, and we just need to persuade Hyperion to release it to the public.
Okay. And then I guess lastly, speaking about the relationship between the team and Hyperion and so forth, I know that you've done a huge amount of work. I mean, the SDK has basically been, well, I don't know. I mean,
it's not.
You've been championing so many things over the past year.
Yeah, the thing is with the SDK, all the stuff that are included in the SDK were out there. Okay, they were in OS4 depot, they were on GitHub, and you had to compile things to make them work on your system. So my work was to find all this stuff, bring it into the SDK, try to make them work all together, orchestrate in a way how they work, how they are going to be installed on users' machine, update the documentation, push the OS4 developers to update the examples. I did a lot of updates myself, and they approved them so to be included in their SVN and also in the SDK, and find people to update the tools. For example, I talked with Costel to update the tool that we have inside the SDK that you can use to read the Autodoc files, the documentation. And also I discussed with Dr. Volker and Frank Mariak about the VBCC, tested everything that are working quite well and all this stuff. That was my job. It took 5-6 months, but it was to find all this stuff and use them inside the SDK.
Do you need assistance for the next release? I mean, that's what I was going to ask. Do you need to do a pitch for more volunteers? Or?
The thing is that there are a lot of things that we need to do, right, in our OS4, and to make there are a lot of tools that we would like to have in the latest version, but this is not possible for me, or I don't know who is going to get involved to make all this stuff. So what I'm planning to do the next month is to create a small, simple website where people are going to put ideas. What do they want? I want a new version of Make, or I want the latest GCC version. Okay, and others will be able to vote the ideas that they like most. So from this list that is going to be created, pick up the 2 best or doable and work on this.
This will be on OS4 coding, will it?
Sorry?
Will the poll be on OS4 coding.net? That seems to be where a lot of the developers.
I don't know where it's going to be yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but we will see.
The latest SDK, is there a comprehensive list of what is in it that is not inside the compressed file that is distributed? So that someone can actually know what's in it without having to download.
In the news item that Hyperion has on his first page at the website has a good amount of all the changes.
Okay, and is this, I'm a little ignorant about the previous distribution models when it comes to the SDK, but is this SDK freely downloadable, or is it
Freely,
something that
yeah.
you have to authenticate?
Nothing. You can go to the website and not even log in. You can go and download it.
Can you go to the website just to show where it's at?
It would be useful to distribute the PDF that comes with the PDF that.
What's the website?
Hyperion-entertainment.com. Yeah.
Hey, I've been there before.
Yeah, that's it. You know, that's right.
Oh wow, right there on the front.
Yeah, that's a good list of all the updates and that were included over there.
I mean, there's a ton of stuff in there. So, for example, this is the latest examples. Well, there's lots of examples. There's examples, there's reaction examples.
And my plan for the next version is, if anyone wants to contribute with examples that are useful and generic for people to use it, even add more examples there. Because someone that has an idea and wants to implement something, the first thing that he can do is go and check the examples and take part of this code and use on his application.
On the subject of components in the SDK, to the best of your knowledge right now, all of the third-party components that you've collected are the latest versions, or?
Yes,
Okay.
the latest versions. For example, the VBCC, the day that we released the SDK, the VBCC released a newer version. But this was an update for bug fixes, if I'm not wrong.
And when it comes to the actual contents of the SDK, is there a way to figure out? I don't know when the last SDK release was. How was it?
It was last year, 2021, at December.
And is it possible to tell what's changed between those easily?
Like a
Yes.
change log or something?
Well, or
Yeah.
even just like.
Without downloading the package, or with
Either
the
or.
okay, without downloading, the information is the one that you see in the Hyperion website. If you download it, there is a change log inside the package. Before you install anything, there is a TXT file with all the changes and all the versions that were changed.
I do have a Git-related question. What is the underlying reason why there's not a full port for Git?
One of the reasons I think is that if you want to port it, you need LLVM, okay? We don't have something like that. Otherwise, you have to figure out how to make it work. You have to compile the library Git version 2.
Git cannot be compiled with GCC.
So here you are.
No, that's a question, not a statement. Is it true?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I tried a couple of times. I didn't succeed, but I didn't put a lot of effort on that. I would like to have that.
I'm curious exactly where.
I'd like to have the latest version, but yeah.
Seems like, I mean, simple Git probably meets like 80-90% of what most people will need. But it does seem, for anyone that does development work in a modern context, they pretty much at this point are using Git in some capacity.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that there is not a port for
Yeah.
man-hour problem.
And then we can push or persuade Simon to include that with the code bench, because right now code bench is using only supports SVN. So that will be useful as well.
And the
Right.
SVN we have is very old.
Maybe that version that is included in the SDK is newer than the one that you might have,
Right.
but it's the last version Olaf was released.
Okay.
And yeah, and that's one of the things I would like to mention, like LD asked earlier, what the community can do. If there are things that we need and you are capable to do it, go there and do it, because who else is going to do it?
So with a lot of volunteer-led efforts like this, the weakest link is the person that's doing the work. If you don't make it back home, all that knowledge goes away, right? All of that tribal knowledge that only exists in your head.
Exactly.
On the processes that you followed to release this. So my own personal ask, I guess, would be to write down as much of it as you can.
Well,
Even if it's not in a method, even if it's not in a organized enough document that you would be comfortable sharing it with others.
Yeah.
And to that end, exactly like you said, Aldi, and add the information you figure out to the wiki. I mean, when I last was trying to learn C and program, as I was figuring things out, I was using the wiki to try to learn from there.
Exactly.
But I was also, the wiki really didn't explain how to do this, this, and this. The reason why it's a wiki is you can edit the wiki. Get in touch with one of the devs, George, I don't know if you can do it, who can go on in and give you access to the wiki, and you can edit the wiki to make it better for all the other people that are following behind you that are also trying to learn those same things. To that end, I know I've uploaded a number of examples of code to the wiki as I figured out things. Really what I probably should do is go pull those examples out, give them to you to add them into the next SDK also. But you have the SDK that has the stuff that you can compile right there on the drive. You have the wiki where it's there also, where you can cut and paste it and install it.
Exactly.
And there's verbiage that goes along that code to explain how that stuff worked. So you can see how to, open up a request or start the program and read the arguments. It's all there on the wiki. So that's for the volunteers to do, for the people out there. You want to learn. As you learn, help other people learn, add to the wiki.
Yeah, actually. And right now we all have access to the internet, right? You have there's no excuse to not use the wiki because, I don't know. So I think that if we have a single place where all the knowledge and all the truth about developing with AmiWest 4 is gathered, that's the best place to have. Of course, there are our communities and our forums that people are helping a lot, like on os4coding.net and amigans.net. If someone has a problem with something, he tries to compile something and it doesn't work, he can ask there and someone is going to help.
One of the things that I think is sort of an occupational hazard, if you want to call it that, is for everyone that has been involved in Amiga software development for a long time, they know that all those resources exist.
Yeah.
But for someone that might just have an Amiga OS install and be a software developer, but not ever have, never touched software development on Amiga OS, if you have to go hunting for those resources yourself, the barrier to entry is significantly higher than if you know those resources are there.
Yeah.
Does the SDK itself provide any of those breadcrumbs about, here are resources that you could go to for, community support?
For community support, no. In the introduction PDF file, you have the information, and even on the first page, you have the URL of the wiki, AmigaOS.net, which is, let's say, the most official way to get that information that you need. But no, we don't. I don't mention in that document the forums. Okay. Maybe that's something that we might need to add.
One thing too that I had thought about is, in terms of lowering the barrier to, compiling a Hello World app or something like that.
Yeah.
Are there any end-to-end documents, or maybe even a YouTube video or something, where you take the SDK, download it, install it on a stock Amiga OS system, so that people know what they're getting into before they.
If you visit the os4coding.net, there is a whole section with videos, and there are videos from the DevCons that happened in AmiWest the previous years, and there are videos from YouTube where you can find about the development of OS4. Okay. If you check video tutorials. Also, I have done a video about a stream on my own with the previous SDK and how you can compile a Hello World. And I talked about the structure of the SDK and the folders in there. And that was a year ago, but I plan to do one more for the new SDK and all this stuff.
And that's where?
They are on my YouTube channel. That, of course, are going to be added in this page for OS4 coding. OS4 coding is only dedicated for Amiga OS4.
Right.
So most of the developers are looking on that, and Amigans.net, which is the biggest forum for Amiga OS4 users, right?
Right. That, and then simply the wiki.
And
the wiki.
And the
People add
wiki.
things there.
The thing with the wiki is that you get all the information, but sometimes if you don't have the knowledge, or you never had done something before, you might get a little bit confused on things.
Right. Well, that's
right?
what I was trying to do because I only dabbled very little in C coding. And as I was going through the wiki, and it was obviously derived from the original SDK documentation. And, you're trying to figure this out. What exactly do they mean by this? Well, the whole reason for that, I would go into it, I would edit it, or in one case, I remember loading up something about requesters, and this really wasn't making sense. So I actually made a new page in the wiki that was, I think it was Requesters 101.
Yeah.
It was a whole separate little page for the idiot coder, Requesters for noobs.
Yeah.
And, here's how you bring it up.
One of the biggest, shortcomings of wikis in general is that they bit rot.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they bit rot.
It becomes less
The
useful.
information is correct.
If you go to reference here, for just one, let me give an example. If you go to reference under developers, please. Thank you very much. And then scroll down where the SDK section is. Just take a look at release notes for just a moment, if you would. Okay. And scroll down a little bit further. So the last time Sully released one was back in Final Edition. And I actually did this. Keep scrolling. This is something that developers actually need to know. They need to know what functions have been deprecated, what the replacements are, what the new libraries are, what functions to go look and review at. You go scroll back up here a little bit and click on the deprecated functions link. Yes, sir. Right there. Thank you very much. And scroll down. Keep going. Yeah, there you go. So the point is that if you're using ASL library, you need to know this because the first time you're going to encounter this is when you compile your code. Hopefully it only gives you a warning, right? But you need to know what to do. Do I just include underscore obsolete? What do I replace it with? What do I look at the autodocs? These types of things are useful. And but the point is that this was useful, but now we are several years in the future. I haven't done this again, but that's what some developers are going to need to know. These are some nitty-gritty details. So yes, you need stuff for newbies, but also for people who are actually updating. So for example, I want to release something from my table here, and I'm going to use your guide to compile with GCC 6 and all that other wonderful stuff. And the next thing I know, I've got all this DOS stuff that I've got to fix. Well, what do I replace it with? I don't know. And it'd be useful to have guides that guide you through that so that it makes life easier as the developers move on and make things better. We also want to maintain not only backwards compatibility, but the ability for people to very easily adopt the new way of things.
Yeah.
So I should know.
You know that the developers are writing code, right?
Yeah.
So they never complain on sit down and write thousands of lines of code, but they will always complain if you ask them to document anything.
Exactly.
So other communities, what they do is they say that, okay, that date, that weekend, we gather all together online, and we work to.
Happens with volunteers.
Yeah, but my point is, most of the people say that, okay, Hyperion is going to do that, or George is going to do that, or LD is going to do that, and they wait for the others.
You're doing it. Right.
So,
Right.
my
Let me know
point,
when you're done.
yeah, exactly. You have the weekend.
Yeah,
Come on,
right.
update everything. So my point is, why we don't agree on something like that? Let's say that every 6 months we arrange a weekend where we go and update whatever we can.
Whatever is of interest to you.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so in the open source community, in community-driven Linux distributions, there are often documentation teams
Yes.
of people who are not necessarily full-blown software developers, but are working towards that goal or would like to just know more. And they often provide a perspective that a grizzled software developer won't have, especially when it comes to the documentation assuming certain things, because pretty much all documentation assumes some things even without realizing, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
You assume a certain level of baseline knowledge, and you kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just
Exactly.
never stop right.
Exactly.
Right? But so I actually think the wiki is great for that, because you can, you don't have to have a 1,000-page manual.
Right.
You can just link off to something
Exactly.
that's
Right.
specific to that one area, without having to have
And
manual below.
that's what I was kind of looking at, is because I don't know, the API of AmiWest. No, it's fascinating and awe-inspiring. I watched Camilla yesterday just whip through code, and she's just going, "Oh yeah, I need
It's
to put a
simple.
gadget here, just boom, 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 from memory, coding GUI and intuition." And she knows what all the damn gadget classes and names are. Oh my God, Jesus Christ! It would have taken me a week to have put one button on the screen. She's like whipping them out like nothing. So, but in the course of my doing this, my whole goal was, okay, there's an example code that shows you how to put buttons up there, but it's making those preconceived notions about how do you load an image into a button gadget. Well, they didn't explain where you get that image from. They assumed you already knew the image class.
Yeah.
And it was probably the last thing I coded a year or two ago, was trying to make a window with some buttons on it, with images on the buttons. And my intent was, once I figured that out, is go back into the wiki and create another little page here. 101, making a button with an image.
Exactly.
Here's how you do it.
Do those
Yeah.
pages that you create, are they are they orphan pages that aren't linked to anywhere, or is it?
No, they're in there. I mean, if you go, and I haven't done a lot of them because I did things, because some of them are written as tutorials that were in the AmiWest pages. So in there, there's like a tutorial on startup on programs. I know I did one where I went through this whole thing of trying to figure out how tool types get loaded into a program. If you write a program, and it could be either started from the CLI or from the workbench, how does your program get its startup information? One, the program has to figure out, is it started from the workbench or the CLI? Two, it load the stuff either from the tool types or from the program, the parent, the parameters that were fed to the command line.
Yeah.
And that code's in there. There's example code in there to do that. And it just prints out the results right there on the screen. So you can fire it up. Then it prints out the results of what you started in the CLI, or it opens up a window and shows you what you got. That was the kind of example code that was helpful to me while I was trying to write something. And it's in the tutorial on the wiki. Like I said, I did something on a requester. I did some other miscellaneous little examples. Or, for example, I should do with this button whenever I.
The thing
finish
is that
doing that.
everyone is overwhelmed, all the developers, right?
Yeah.
And everyone. So we are locked in our microcosm right now, and we say, okay, I don't have time to update the wiki and add that information or whatever. We need, as a community, to step up and start doing things towards that direction, because a lot of developers, old developers from AmiWest 4 came, did amazing things, left, and all this knowledge is lost, right? So I agree with you, but we need to see that as a community and start doing this stuff.
Right. Well,
We can't anymore wait for someone to do. We can't wait for Steven to do it, or Paul, or LD, or you, or me. We have to do it all together. And to me, there are examples from other communities that we can embrace and start working like them.
and there's obviously the benefit, which really shouldn't have to be said. You pass on this information, this knowledge. Yeah, it took you a little bit of time to sit there and write the page, but you could help 5 other people who are all beginner developers who are trying to figure out how to program something. And look, you figured out how to read the tool types.
Yeah.
How many different programs do you have where they can't get the information into the program? You have the source code right there. It compiles. It's on the wiki.
Yeah.
And that's just the little example I know about. Every programmer has to figure out things as they go along. When you figure something out, take an evening to sit down and document it on the wiki.
And it's not only for providing code. You don't need, sometimes you don't even need to provide code. I was on OS4 coding, and you remember the Media Vault that I created an application, okay? I was thinking, how do they have a list browser and then they change the content at the right by clicking something on the list browser? I couldn't find the logic behind it, the algorithm. And I went to the forum and I asked, and they said, okay, you need to have a list browser and pages, and you can do it. They didn't provide any functional code, but they provided the logic behind it. And then if you have that, you can say, okay, how I create pages, or how I create the list browser. And you can go and do that. But for someone that would like to start on that, the examples that are included in the SDK are the perfect way to start creating something. And the wiki, as we discussed.
Does the SDK, when the SDK is updated, is it clear what the system requirements are in terms of versions of OS components?
For the SDK itself?
For the SDK to work.
AmiWest 4 doesn't need
The
any other
latest
requirement.
OS4,
Sorry?
the latest public release.
I think you can use even the AmiWest 4.0, because the SDK doesn't rely on anything from the AmiWest.
Right, but I mean, if you compile something.
If you
the
combine,
Amiga
you have
OS
to have the latest.
Right, you have to have, because you're going to compile something,
Yeah,
it's going to be
because-
looking for OS 4.1. You're
Exactly.
running on 4.0, it's going to,
Yeah.
pop up.
Right, but
Unless you make it compatible with AmiWest 4.
Right.
I guess
Okay.
I should rephrase the question then. What is how does one determine the lower bound of what the SDK supports?
In terms of the supported code, the
In terms
generated
of-
code?
If you compile code,
Okay, yeah.
what will it actually run?
If you compile code, let's say, and you use methods that are included in the latest version of new lib, you
Well, and you think
require that version. And-
in AmigaOS, there's nothing preventing you from going back and using an old intuition call.
Yes.
It's still in there. You could write code that would run on
Even-
OS 4.0.0.0.
Yeah. Even the
because
obsolete
old
methods.
intuition window class calls are still there.
I guess where I'm
Yeah.
going with this though is under Xcode, I can compile an application and know exactly which versions of macOS it will work with.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't believe any kind of comparable mechanism exists because it's fairly complicated to
Yeah.
arrive at that. But it would still be good to have a sentence that says basically if you're not running this version of intuition, don't bother.
Yeah.
It won't work.
Okay. In the Autodocs, the methods that you have for the API, they say the version of the new lib, for example, new lib, that needs to the minimum version.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the version that this method was introduced. And that is for DOS as well. So someone who reads the Autodocs can find that information there. And then I think, you can create any application to run even the old 4.0 versions of AmigaOS, because some people still use that if you want.
In theory, couldn't you with BBC?
VBCC? Yeah.
You could, with the SDK, write 68K code and compile it to VBCC.
Yeah, because VBCC is mostly
support
ANSI.
68K. Right.
Okay, so if you add in the SDK the target file for the 68K, you can do it.
So it all comes down to the code you're going to use. You could go pull out your 1.3 RKMs
Yes.
and write that code,
Yeah.
pick that compiler, and generate the code for OS 3.
Yeah.
0.1.
If you want to do it, you can do it. And all the methods from the earlier versions of AmigaOS 4 are already are there. Maybe sometimes you will have to use the obsolete header files, obsolete DOS, for example, but they are there and you can do it.
If you want to develop just port an app that was designed, for AmigaOS 3.0 to say 3.12 and make use of some of the new API calls. Can all of that be done under OS 4, or must it be done under AmigaOS 3?
I think you can do it under OS 4 just fine.
Okay.
But my recommendations for that is to see what are the changes between the APIs, and then use pre-compiler directives and say that if it is AmigaOS, use this part of the code. If it is AmigaOS 3, use this part of the code, and do that changes so that you don't break your code to compile for AmigaOS 3. Unless if you don't care about that, change it.
Well, then, obviously, from what Camilla showed, they have an OS 3.2 NDK. So,
Yeah.
and in theory, how could you install that?
In
Generate-
AmigaOS 4?
Yeah, I know. How would that work? I don't know. That would be a whole nother thing, wouldn't it?
That will be sure, but the thing is that the AmigaOS 3.2 NDK with AmigaOS 4 SDK, they have a lot of differences, but for gadgets and classes, they are pretty close, and you might be able to do similar stuff. The code be able to be compiled for AmigaOS 3 without changing anything.
Right.
But I don't know if this is possible 100% with all the classes, right?
Right.
Because a lot of the classes, of the reaction classes that they created for 3.2, follow the same path with AmigaOS 4, or vice versa. Sometimes.
Pizza's here,
Yes.
so.
We can keep talking and eating.
We can talk and eat,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. That's all. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, George.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, all right. So for the folks online, we got Hollywood at 1. So I'll just move the camera into the background, mute the mic. People can watch the seat and have a good time.
And then my affiliation is SAT, AmiWest, you can remember?
It says it's streaming, but the video's frozen on the YouTube.
Thank you.
I'm gonna send you links to these.
Mhm.
When I get back home in a couple of weeks, I'll send you a high res of like Bill or anybody else.
That one in particular I want.
Okay. Good enough to print.
Yes, we're gonna print it. And I have a high resolution printer that I can make it
I'll probably
easy.
take some pictures this year tomorrow.
Excellent. Yours are some of the best we've ever had.
Well, thank you, sir.
I kick myself because I bring so much stuff that I don't bring my cameras, and I always thought I was good, but you do better. I took a lot of pictures as a youngster. I worked on staff for Minolta for 20 years. So I had a lot of photography in my blood. I remember when we switched over. And then the Amiga took over.
All right. Someone on YouTube says streaming is running. Maybe it's just my
Yeah.
iPad doesn't show the.
Contacts over here.
Let me have a look.
I need to get.
That's on YouTube, right?
I really did on a
Pardon?
That's on YouTube.
Yeah, it should be coming to YouTube right now. DevCon Day 2. Day 2. Hey, looks like yours moves. All right.
Yeah.
So let me refresh my. Oh no, mine's moving.
And your microphone is on.
Yes. Yes. All right. So I think everything is reconnected. Everything looks like it's working. All right. So now we're just waiting for Sam to show up, which I've seen him in the chat. So I expect him to be here soon. All right. For the folks watching on YouTube, just FYI, we had a great lunch here. There's lots of leftover pizza, so you really should have been here for the DevCon to partake in the pizza. I know you all got to see the pizza planning this morning, which was the highlight since AOZ Studio. We had a scheduling conflict and could not get them online. All right. Starting to see more people on the YouTube. Cool. We have more people from the weekend show showing up and starting to do some setup in the room next door. If you haven't looked at the show lineup, go to the schedule area on AmiWest.net, and you can see all the speakers that we have lined up for this weekend. It's a pretty exciting lineup. One of the better ones I think we've had in recent years. Of course, COVID's turned everything on its head. We actually had a really good lineup that first year of COVID going remote. Really got a broader reach of speakers that year from all over the world. So that was an exciting year. So this year, we're looking forward to a lot more attendance on site here. We're gonna have a big exhibit hall. I think this will be the biggest exhibit hall we've had in a while as well. We're gonna have some classics on display, some next gen on display. So if you can't make the whole broadcast on the weekend, Bill has a little section on there for walking around the exhibit hall, and I personally think that's a pretty good session to tune into because he walks around. I'm not sure he's going to do a tablet or a phone, but he's going to walk around the show floor and show all the different things that are being shown. And actually, I think we're going to have a few things for sale. So it'll be a cool look at the exhibit hall portion of the show. All right. Sam, if you're out there, we're ready. Do what? Oh, we got stuff in the chat. Right, so I'm sharing my slideshow screen. What's missing? Okay, so let's see here. I think we might be in separate meetings or something. Sam's in. So let's see here. Let's see here. Or wait a minute. I wonder if I need to let him in. Let's remove that. I think I might have this thing set up wrong. Let's see here. Oh, there we go.
There we go. I guess I'm just going to have to do it through the browser. I was using the app.
Oh, I if you want to try and do it through the app again, Sam,
Yeah?
I think I had the security tied down from when we were on earlier, so I opened it back
Okay.
up. So give another try, and we'll see if that works better for you.
Okay, there's a lag here.
All right, we're almost there. Almost there. Camilla's on the live chat. She says, I see I'm still the only one that started on time. Smiles. Yep. Camilla, you rock. We were just talking about you today. How we were impressed with how you can just go and start typing away code and just you have all the settings and everything memorized while
the API right off the bat, just start cranking away.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to totally do it through the browser because the app's not working.
Okay. Okay.
What are you trying to do? Sure. What's he trying to do that?
Oh, there.
He said he was trying to do it through the app.
No, he said he was going to switch to the app.
And then he said it didn't work.
All right. Can you see the slideshow now?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to start it then.
Sweet.
Okay, I gotta turn off my phone. It's got a terrible lag, and it's got about 30 seconds ago sound coming through it.
Yeah, the YouTube. I think they must do that for like their copyright checks or something. Put something
Oh
like in
yeah.
there.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Hollywood scripting class. I've divided this into several subsections so you don't have to sit in one place for too long. This first is a primer.
All right.
Hollywood is a scripting engine, and it is named after the city rather than being in any way related to it. It has a rich plugin system that we will be exploring later in the presentation. At the end, we'll look at the RapidGUI plugin and how to use it. The language is the basis for Hollywood Designer, which won't be covered in this presentation because I don't own Designer. And I'm using dual screen support in my Linux box right now. Designer has many of the features of PowerPoint, but is mainly just a GUI front end for Hollywood. The preprocessor commands allow embedding and preloading of media files into the final presentation file, whether that is a Hollywood applet or an executable file. It is also the means to set the metadata used by the version command, for one thing. Selecting the proper locale support is also a feature of the preprocessor, as is the plugin selection and importing additional source files for modularity. You can tell a preprocessor symbol in the code by its prefix of the @ symbol.
Hey Sam, we're sitting on the first slide. Were the slides supposed to be switching as you go through?
Yeah,
or?
Yeah, they are.
It's a different screen.
Oh, I think I know how to fix that. Just hold on a second.
Okay.
Jitsi Meet is sharing a window rather than the screen, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll turn off the screen share and turn it back on, this time sharing the whole screen. Let's try that.
No, looks the same.
Okay, now I'm on the first slide.
Yeah.
I'll try advancing it.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay,
All right.
that'll work. Okay. I guess I won't read my notes for the past couple slides.
Yeah, we can get back on the track.
All right, this is the one I just finished reading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's a simple text-based hello world example. Notice how the version preprocessor directive limits Hollywood compilers having less than version 2.0 from compiling it. Nice and simple.
Cool.
Okay, next one. There are 6 primitive data types in Hollywood: integer, whole numbers, floating point, which allow fractional parts as decimals and are stored in scientific notation. Strings are buffers to hold Unicode or ISO Latin text. Tables, which store multiple items like namespaces, arrays, classes, and maps, are all rolled into one entity. Functions are also a data type that stores Hollywood bytecode. Finally, the nil type is no type at all, but is mainly a placeholder. It is assigned to variables to cause them to be garbage collected.
Do the tables have to be a fixed size, or can they be variably sized?
They're variable size.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a few slides. While variables are not fixed to a single type their entire lifetime, it's recommended to keep them that way as such. I haven't followed the Hollywood style guide in this example because each use of myvar is assigned to a different type. Normally, a floating point variable was delimited with an exclamation point, while a string would end with a $sign. Notice in the last example that multiple assignments and return values can be returned and combined, and though I didn't show it here, functions can have multiple return values, and the receiving variables are comma separated as displayed here.
Cool.
Okay, that's the basic variables. Local and global scope is next. Okay. Variables have local or global scope, and global is the default. They are visible anywhere in the script, but that isn't always an advantage. Locals are garbage collected after their use count reaches 0, usually at the end of the function. This means they don't sit around after their usefulness is gone. Simulating other scopes like class visibility is accomplished using the table data structure as mentioned later on. Constants, other than the Boolean type, true and false, start with the pound symbol or hash symbol, whatever, and are assigned once using the const command or passed in via command line parameter option. They are evaluated before the program starts running and are often used to give more runtime speed. They cannot go out of scope, so they are always global. The table is the only type in Hollywood that can store other types. For each key in the table, there is a value. Stored values can be any type recognized by Hollywood, including other tables. Only the integer type or string type can be used as keys, but floating point has rounding problems, and tables also cannot be keys to other tables.
We got a question here.
Okay.
Is Hollywood an interpretive language or a compiled language, or it can be either?
It compiles to a bytecode and then interprets the bytecode, so it's both.
Both.
Okay, and go ahead and pipe up with questions, or I can't see the YouTube stuff right now because of the delay. I was going to look on my phone just in case there were comments from there too. So you might have to holler if somebody says something there.
Okay.
Okay. I'll only make a brief mention of meta methods for the table data type. It allows math functions and other operators to be defined for specific tables having the same meta table, such as making a table into a function look-alike. Avoid using it if possible because it makes code look confusing. It can be bypassed using the raw get, raw set, and raw equal so that the table characteristics are always accessible either from within a meta method or bypassing them. It's kind of like, like it says in the slide, operator overloading. Classes are used to contain data and optionally functions. When functions are stored with the associated data, that's called object-oriented programming. There is an additional slideshow on how to use tables for object-oriented programming later on. Arrays are wrappers for tables in Hollywood, so there's no speed advantage over any other table usage, but there are special support functions for them, including the list subtype that stores a hidden length member in the metadata as of version 9.0. Namespaces are containers for classes, but they're essentially just another container like any other. Based on the table, all of these. Conditionals come in two flavors in Hollywood: if statements and switch statements. The if, else, and if statement is a Boolean version of the switch statement, in that the statement passed in must evaluate to 0 for false and non-zero for true. Switch statements have multiple case statements for either integer or string values. The values tested against in the string switch statement must be constants. There are 4 types of looping constructs in Hollywood. The while when is a pretest loop and repeats as long as the conditional expression is met. The repeat until construct is a post-test construct and repeats if the conditional expression is not met. And I'll continue this on the next slide. The counted for loop is for numeric units and can have an optional step value that would otherwise default to 1. The general for loop is used with an iterator function to iterate over tables mostly. I didn't write it in my notes, but there's also a string iterator that uses a regex as its key thing. iPairs iterates in a numeric order over arrays or tables with integer keys, while the pairs the pairs iterator generates a non-repeating, unsorted order of all keys in a table regardless of the type of the keys. Functions group commands together. In Hollywood, they can be stored in variables like any other constant data type or stored as table members. Methods in Hollywood are implemented as a shorthand for passing the table containing it as the self parameter in the function. It's an object-oriented version of the function type, indicated using the colon notation rather than the dot notation. And of course, once we cover object-oriented programming in the second slideshow, that'll become readily apparent. The return statement exits the function immediately with an optional 1 or more parameters. In Hollywood, returned parameters must be contained in parentheses. Local values can be passed back because when they are assigned to the return code, the reference count is increased before the local variable goes out of scope, avoiding the use after free condition. There are other flow control commands like the continue command, which restarts the current iteration of the loop from inside the loop construct. Break exits a loop or conditional. Note that switch statements normally do not need a break statement to exit after a case statement, but use the fall through command to indicate the next case needs to be evaluated without ending the statement. Fall through can also be specified at the end of the first line of a switch to give a C-style fall through by default characteristic, making break statements necessary once again if desired. Here's a more advanced Hello World example that uses the requester library function system request. It pops it up and waits until you hit the OK button. It would have worked in Hollywood 2.0 if we hadn't specified the REQ icon information constant. There are many libraries of routines built into Hollywood as well as plugins that add to them. The video codecs supported by Hollywood can vary from operating system to operating system, as can any format, but there are built-in codecs in Hollywood itself and its player. There are plugins that add to the number and type of supported formats as well. As you can see from this slide, there are quite a number of media format types supported. There are also an expansive list of capabilities contained in the libraries as well. Locale support defaults to Unicode UTF-8 unless specified otherwise, for example. The operating system support libraries are also quite extensive. AREX ports and calls are here as well as Docky support and public screens. The mobile OSs include on-screen keyboard support as is needed. Even Windows registry and shortcut icons can be used. So shortcut icons, did I say? Oh well. I got here's another slide full of available plugins I just pulled off of their website. Music playback formats, graphics loaders, archivers. And here's a few more plugins: video playback, networking, animation, and it can even import files from Scala Multimedia. and display them on a graphics card using Hollywood. And rounding it out, there's graphics acceleration APIs, OpenGL, SDL2, the like. These links should work when clicked from the PDF version of the slideshow I've uploaded on GitHub. Or if they don't, it's just appended to the hollywood-mal.com for the documentation and downloads. That's the end of this slideshow. Are there any other questions so far?
Well, guys, any questions?
I have a question. You mentioned earlier importers the XML, right? And the
Yes.
element. I'd like to ask you about the XML. What's the reason to import that? How you can use it?
It's actually a plugin. You download the plugin from the Hollywood website, and it actually imports XML into tables.
For data manipulation?
For data, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, in fact, it's as I'll cover in the next slideshow, there's serialization commands in Hollywood to just slurp in data from other formats, including JSON, and then there's a plugin for XML and a couple of other, well, not a couple of others, but anyway.
Does this have plugins to do things with SOAP or REST services?
No, not. I think the only networking plugins there's Hurl, which is a Hollywood version of curl, so you can actually do that manually for REST services.
Okay.
And then the other one is HTTP Streamer that lets you stream video through Hollywood.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions?
Looks like everyone here is happy. Let me check the YouTube. They're a little bit behind us, as you've seen, but I don't see anything in the chat. So
okay,
let's keep going.
Okay, I got another slideshow. I'll exit this one and pull up the next. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Here we are.
Looking good.
All right. If anyone wants to take a little bit of time to stretch, now is a good time. I'm kind of breezing through these a lot quicker than I thought I would. This has only taken about, 15, 20 minutes for the first slideshow?
Yeah.
So that wasn't too bad.
No, that's the intro stuff. Everyone here is like just eating it up, like through a fire hose.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. This next one is the intermediate level object-oriented Hollywood techniques, and it focuses almost exclusively on tables and I'll be focusing on aspects of tables that are not covered very much in the manual either. So I think this will be a good addition to the presentation. Are we ready to go? Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. There are 5 main uses of tables in Hollywood. The map usage, also known as hashing, is how tables are implemented internally. Arrays are presently only implemented in tables as well, but that may change in future versions of Hollywood. Classes are the basis of object-oriented programming. Namespaces are a side effect usage of tables. Finally, there are serialization methods built into Hollywood that allow tables to act as file buffers. Hash tables associate keys with values. The keys can be integers or strings. Keys must be unique, but values can be stored in more than once in a table. Writing to a key already in use will overwrite the contents. Values can be any type. Tables stored in other tables are a common occurrence, as you will see in later slides. Tables in Python are called dictionaries, and in C++ they are called unordered maps. They are the preferred means of associating strings with values. Here's an example of a table used in an array constant as an array constant. It has all of the major types stored in it, including a nested table. Note that all uninitialized table indexes are evaluated as a nil type, and the first index is always 0. As long as the keys are unique in the underlying table construct, the inner tables are allowed to be any length and are not really multidimensional. Memory slab style array literals may be coming in a future version of Hollywood. They can be improvised in the memory block library functions, but not serializable to and from variables yet. As a side note, the memory block library routines can convert table arrays to memory blocks and back again through, though, and support endian conversions. Of course, as mentioning endians, the Hollywood language is primarily big endian and defaults to that storage for most of its data structures, unless specified otherwise here, as here. Since functions can be stored in variables in Hollywood, it should come as no surprise that tables can also store functions. Storing functions with the data they associate with is called object-oriented encapsulation in the classes. The main difference between methods and functions is the reference to self, which is the table in which the method is stored. Here's an example of a class. Can you spot the error? In the next slide, we'll cover it. It's right here. Okay. Static functions cannot reference the self table because it's not passed in as the first parameter. So here we go. Here's the fix right here. Using a colon converts the function to a method so that it will always have the implicit self as the first parameter. Here's another class. It only works if X is a primitive type, though.
I wasn't quite following that self. Is that kind of like the this in JavaScript?
Yeah, yeah, and in C++ as well, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure. Can you figure out why this is a bug?
Because the X is not a primitive?
Yes, it's a table. So it aliases to the Y variable, and it just has a use count of 2. So you can't assign Y a value without it also going to X. That's why you get a 1 here. Good, well spotted. Here's the best solution. Copy table is by default does a deep copy, but if you pass false as the second parameter, it'll do a shallow copy for you just as easily. One of the most important characteristics about object-oriented programming is called polymorphism. In this case, the def variable is initialized to the default values of the B class. The new function, called a constructor, could also have initialized them as well. Any mixture of the default values and initialization parameters will do. So yeah, let's see, where's def? There it is. There's the constructor, and it just copies the table and returns it. The show method of class C doesn't have anything to show, except the string nothing to show. Okay, straightforward. Array D contains the two classes B and C from the previous two slides. Since they each have a show method, the for each functions can, did I use for each or for each I? I use for each I. The for each I function can call them each. Note that the way that X is declared as a local and is garbage collected when the end function is occurred. Note also that the I pairs iterator and unnamed function definition is passed into the for each I function as parameters. This is called dependency injection in JavaScript and other scripting languages as well. This is all the for each I. This is where for each I ends. It just passes the function in as a parameter. That's what I was describing. Notice here that the generalized for in construct is simpler than the for each I function, but the value of variable X doesn't get garbage collected until the new value is assigned into it, and that the last value of X bleeds across into the remaining code in the function unless you manually assign it to nil. Here's another way of doing the same thing, but it's not quite as clear as just using the for each I function. The block construct does contain the scope of the local variables X and Y, however. Just another way of doing the same thing, though. The write table and read table commands serialize tables to disk, including everything in them. When serializing and deserializing, there are several gotchas involved. They will be addressed in the last few slides of this presentation. Here's a global function that will remove all functions from a table, including all nested tables. Pretty straightforward. It's recursive, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I've listed a few reasons here telling why you don't want to just leave the function definitions inside the data file. The chief one is that a carefully crafted bytecode written by another Hollywood programmer could perform hostile actions on the computer loading the file. Other ones, including bugs existing and long past their original corrective action. Finally, the bytecode takes up memory and disk space anyway. The moral of the story, don't be lazy. Clear the bytecodes when you don't want them saved. For relinking in the methods in a table when reloading, the program needs to know what type of class the methods belong to. Adding a class key with a string attached is useful when there are so many nested tables that offsets won't be known from the beginning of the file. Adding a header and format version to the front of a file makes it easy to know the file type, so it's also a useful technique. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to describe how case-sensitive keys can make things run amok. Here's a couple examples of syntax that converts to lowercase keys. Because the function call name converts to lowercase also, it's required that you do the same when assigning methods back to their table keys. Always lowercase here, even though it's typed in camel case, these two become lowercase. Here it is. I guess I was expecting the next slide. Here it is. Since the function calls are required to be lowercase, assigning them back to their key names needs to be done properly. The first one is a lowercase pointer, function pointer. Did I say pointer? Lowercase function, but not a method because it doesn't pass the self parameter like the third one. The second tries to use a colon notation on a variable name, which doesn't work. The fourth one could work if the string in square braces were lowercase, Finally, raw asset is the most reliable way since it bypasses meta methods. This only works because it's already lowercase, though. Same here. I ran into that one in the object-oriented programming example that I'm going to show later on. The built-in serializer is the default and is binary for backward compatibility, small file size, and speed. JSON is called the default serializer even though it isn't the default option, but is useful because it can be viewed and edited from a text editor. There's a plugin for XML reading also that interfaces with the Hollywood deserializer. Other plugins offer compression and encryption as an option as well. The 7th inning stretch. You've completed the object-oriented section of the section of the Hollywood programming session. The next section refers to source code at this link. However, I will be having examples built into the slideshow in case you don't have it downloaded yet. Okay, I breezed through that in 14 minutes, less than 14 minutes. Okay. Here we go. Looks like I might get this done in less than an hour.
So with that capitalization that you're going over there at the end with the functions, do you tend to just make all your functions lowercase to avoid issues?
Actually, they're converted to lowercase. It's only if you try to load them back in from a file or load back the table in from a file and then add them back in that it becomes a problem.
Okay. Oh, I see. I didn't catch that nuance.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
All right.
important to know because I use camel case for my function names.
Okay.
Usually,
All right.
but that doesn't get stored.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a
Right.
very subtle bug that I ran across in RappaEdit. All right. Well, welcome to the third session. We'll cover making Hollywood applications using the RappaGUI plugin by going through the source code of the RappaEdit GUI Builder application sources on GitHub. Oh, I should have asked if there were any more questions on the previous slideshow.
Any questions?
Okay, hearing none. Or
I'm not hearing any. I don't see any on YouTube either.
Okay. So we'll go on. Here we go. To give a little background of RappaGUI, it's the cross-platform GUI plugin for Hollywood. It's based on MUI on the Amiga Likes and WX widgets on the mainstream OSs. It's got a cut-down mobile version for Android, but iOS requires its own proprietary GUI file format used by Apple's own GUI builder. The RappaEdit GUI builder I wrote for RappaGUI was written to demonstrate advanced object-oriented techniques on Hollywood. Its modularity helps programmers work independently on different parts of the code. Since it's under the Apache 2.0 license, anyone is welcome to join in the development team. Haha, hint, hint, plug, plug. All right. Let's start by going through rappaedit.xml file that contains the skeleton of RappaEdit's own GUI. The ID subtags on each item, like here and all of these, are used by the event handler and elsewhere in RappaGUI. I've put MN on IDs on every menu item so I can use a text filter to process items separately. This will make the event handler more modular, as we'll see later on. The empty menu items represent horizontal lines in the menu just to keep things organized. And yes, those lines do appear as just dividing lines in the menu. The toolbar buttons are defined similarly but have icons assigned to them. and the internal brush is loaded in by the Hollywood preprocessor directives in the script. The window has a notification called close request that allows us to put a warning requester when exiting the program. Otherwise, it would exit as soon as you hit the exit gadget without any warning or checks for unsaved data. It's right here. H-splitter is a frame gadget just introduced in the most recent version of Rapagui. It allows resizable frames to be used. V-group stacks items contained in it vertically, as is common to most resizable GUIs. The list view and buttons are pretty straightforward. Also, notice, though, that they each have prefixes before the underscore also. TB here, tree for the tree gadget, select deselection, window add.
So in this example right now, we have a list view and the buttons vertically aligned underneath the list view.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I'll be pulling up in 2 slides. There'll be a screenshot that'll show exactly how it looks.
Okay. And if you want to have shortcuts or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's possible. Definitely
Yeah.
do. Okay. The tree view has a similar definition to the list view of the previous frame, but more methods are defined for tree view gadgets than list view gadgets. All the close tags just wrap up the XML. The editor generates all this stuff for other programs, but it does it graphically. And it's what looks like this. Here's the list view and all the buttons under it. And there's the toolbar, all the menus. I didn't show you the definition of only the file menu, but next slide will be event handling. All right, here we go. Now let's cover the event handling. As mentioned earlier, the ID subtags identify the gadgets, and XML is case sensitive. Event types are dependent on the gadget type. The message data items are parameters passed within the event messages. In all the Rapagui example programs, a switch statement was used, but using table lookups is more modular and allows the different classes to have their own event handlers by encoding their messages with a prefix. Here's an abbreviated form of the global event handler from the main script in rapaedit.hws. It only has some debugging information removed. The only switch statement filters out messages that aren't generated by Rapagui widgets, which is the only kind that are used so far in this program. The prefixes table, accessed by the raw get command, holds the prefixes and handlers for each class. This findster is probably as central as the raw get. It finds where the underscore is, and this clips off everything up to the underscore as a prefix. Pulling up VS Code or whatever it's. All right. Now I'll just, this should look familiar. It's the XML program file that we just went through. And it shows the shortcuts. It's just
are you able to bump the font up a couple of points?
I'll see that. I'll see if I can. This is running. No. Edit.
Isn't it just a zoom in the
Zoom?
Zoom in the browser?
This is not in a browser. This is actually the Code OSS editor. It's a VS Code spinoff. Let's see, view. Appearance. That should do it. No, there it is. Zoom in. How's that? A little better? I'll do it again.
Oh,
That's good. That's good.
There's a little bit of delay. So.
Okay.
That was a lag.
Yeah, there is a little lag. Okay. Yeah, I think I have it set to only update the video frames like 5 frames per second, 6 maybe. So yeah, it's about 1/10 of a second lag. But I didn't show the gadget menu, but it does have shortcut for each. And then the underscore in these is is in itself another shortcut way of designating that. In the case of new, right Amiga N will start a new document. But that's not really what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you more of the code. Okay. It uses the latest version of both Rapagui also. And all of these icons are just PNG files, as you can see, and they load with the transparency set. This here is a table showing non-array elements. It's the load alpha is a key and true is the value. I didn't show that syntax in the earlier slideshow. I probably should have. And then it includes a bunch of other classes, and I'll show you their layout in a bit. These tables here are used for the gadget classes table is used to do the event handling. So each of these has separate event handling sections in them. A lot of these are just global functions. Okay, we can skip through some of these. Preview handler is one of the message handlers, and it just close. Oh, this is when the preview handler actually ends the preview. Window handling. Let's see. Most of this. Okay, here's the menu and toolbar handling. It just passes the message and length of the prefix into it. I probably should have just passed the actual the part of the message ID without the length as being a parameter, so I wouldn't have to do this left stir, but it's a work in progress. This is the one that I was looking for. It only has a few debugging things in it that weren't in. Oh, this isn't even the one I was thinking it was. Oh well, but I've got a bunch of different event handlers, as you can see. Now here's the global one that we saw earlier. A couple of asserts that were added, but not really anything that I didn't show you before. Initialization. Read string 1. That is the first preprocessor definition. It just imports the XML file, and that passes it into MOAI is the prefix for the plugin, not MUI Royale, the Rapagui plugin. Everything plugin based has its own table that it's a member of. That's an example of the namespace use of a table that I mentioned earlier. And then that's it. Here's the global prefixes being assigned to different event handlers. And that's it for it's only about a little over 500 lines of code in the main file. The reason I can do so much with so little code is because most of the code is not in the main file. It's in the gadget files. Here's the button class. Let's see how long it is. About half the length of the main file right there. This adds back all the method names after loading back in the button from a saved document, and this kills all the button, not only the methods, but also any table references that would be circular, because that will cause an infinite loop in the serializer. I forgot to mention that earlier. That also has to be done. No cycles can be allowed in the serializer. But just a couple of methods here. Generating XML and previewing does almost exactly the same thing, except it doesn't indent since the preview doesn't show the code. Okay, I'll pull that up. Here it is. It's still got quite numerous bugs in it, but I can show you a few things. Start a new application data, and by editing, we see that it's got the UTF-8. I can rename this. Or app. And it does it all graphically. I don't have all the tags supported for every item. One thing that I might have to do in the future is to make the applications a separate tab for each document. Presently, I've just got multiple applications stored in the tree view. That's not quite so intuitive, but it works. Added a window. 800 by 600 window. These tags get stored in the file, but they don't actually do anything in the preview yet. I made a note of that in the issue tracker on GitHub. Vertical group. Let's edit that and make it horizontal. Custom color also has not happened, but shows the color checker on Linux. So it'll be it doesn't actually affect the preview there either. I need to add that support later on. Now a rectangle is just a space, and the horizontal group, let's add a radio gadget. Oops, one too many.
Mm-hmm.
And another rectangle. Now let's preview it. Oh, it's empty. Okay, so it's just a rectangle. That's not interesting. Let's edit the radio gadget. One. Two. How many? Now let's see if this works. File, preview, and there you go. You got a radio gadget that lets you choose one or two. This exit preview button was added by the editor script. That won't be in the final version, but this will let us exit the preview. You can do groups inside of groups, as I mentioned earlier, so let's try that. Put a couple buttons in there. I'm double clicking on the list view. I've got that set to automatically add. Yes. Not a toggle gadget. No icon. Okay, that's good for the button. Edit. No. Okay, let's preview it again. There we go. The rectangle is between the yes and no buttons, and they're stacked vertically like the V group says. I'm essentially just killing time here, but there's one other.
So I just wondering now, I mean, can you save this out as Hollywood code then? I mean, is
This whole thing was written in Hollywood.
yeah, but
Just the plugin wasn't.
Yeah, let's say I want to take this GUI that we're taking right now and making, I want to add some additional code to that. How would I do that?
Okay, yeah, you'll need to. This just generates the XML portion of the RapaGUI function.
Okay.
So,
Then you have to
in
add
fact,
that
I'll
to
show
it.
you that. I'll show you that. Export script as there. It shows you the XML that it'll generate.
And then, so let's say you have this beginning of a GUI. Now,
Yes.
it take to make the one of those two buttons you added there pop up a requester and say hello world in the program to make a program that makes that button do that.
Okay, I'd have to add the message processing. I use tables in this program, but you can use switch statements. Basically, what it amounts to is every RapaGUI message that's sent will be one of these ID names have connected to it. So in a switch statement or a table, you'll have a function that would pop up a requester. A system request, I believe, is the command to do that hello world, like I showed in the first slideshow. And that would be it. That would be all that would actually be needed.
Okay, I'm just wondering, I mean, how much work is it to do that? I mean, once you have this, let's say you started building this application in RapaGUI, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay,
can you do that?
Okay, I can actually pull up an example program from the RapaGUI that came with the RapaGUI plugin, and it'll show you, and I'll show you what a more typical case of what a. In fact, I'll even save this as test 4, so we can go back to it later, and that's pretty much working. This. Okay, no, it didn't. Stack Overflow. Oh well. Yeah, the radio gadget I think has some bugs in it still. But anyway, let's see. Oh yes. RapaGUI. What's a good one? By the way, this is a menu that comes with Hollywood itself. It has a nice menuing thing. You can pull up the web page very quickly and easily. It's got shortcuts to everything there. And this is handy because not every integrated development IDE environment has the ability to run a program. So I have all my projects here in this, so I can just display them. Though this time I'm going to be going to see dialog boxes, and we'll show the source code first.
While we're talking a little bit about Hollywood 9 at a high level, I was looking at the website
Okay.
before the session, and it looks to me like when you buy Hollywood, you can use that license on multiple platforms.
Yes,
It looks like,
it's not a per seat license; it's a per person license. So yeah, if you've got a Windows machine, I've got it installed on my Linux machine, my MorphOS machine, my OS4 box, and that's perfectly legal to do. In fact, it's kind of expected since you want to test it on each of the platforms you support. So yes, you're right. That is a thing for Hollywood.
and my next kind of high level question is since it's it says it targets all these platforms. In your experience, is that a fairly seamless process targeting the different platforms, or do you run into gotchas?
There's a few bugs that pop up within Hollywood itself, and that's actually kind of the weak spot of Hollywood. Is that Andreas Falkenhahn is basically the only programmer making Hollywood. So you might have to wait till the next version once you found a bug. So that's kind of a weak spot. Let's see. Here's the event function for this dialogues. First, it switches the action, which identifies Rapagui as one of the types. Attribute, active. These are for different actions for the different menu items and so forth. MN is menus. And then here's another, it's got about 3 layers of case statements here. For pressed buttons, each one has its own code there. And then that's it. I prefer to divide it out so that you can make some of these inner levels of case statements into a separate function and just pass the ID in as a parameter. But for a smaller function, let's go ahead and pop up and show how this works. Okay, Hollywood. Oops, it's on the wrong screen. There it is. And it's just this dialogues, I think, is just a simple database example. It's fairly short and to the point code once you look through it. Okay. And there you go. You got a nice little address book database here. And unghosts the edit and remove. Cancel. I can add another one. Aha, little plug. There you go. And this is just a very nice little short example. Actually, I should pull up the directory that it's in so you can see if it's all the files. usually on the examples, Andreas has just done a file to string command on an external XML file. So let's quit out of this. It doesn't save, but dialogues. I'll pull that. Rapagui. Dialogues. Here it is. Okay, so there's the Hollywood script. It's not actually C source code. I don't know why it says that. Then there's 3 XML files, and the rest is only used by the menu. That's the preview. The ini file tells the parameters to pass, and this is the preview. No, they're both previews. It's just one of them's twice as big.
Mhm.
Anyway, this is all there was to that little program that had us graphically editing a little address book. I guess I could just pull up. Okay, here's the main. Oh, nice and short. Just the main screen here. And let's see. Then the address editor. Also nice and short. So let's see. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to show you on this one. The Rapid Edit editor. Let's get it going again. No, not that one. All right. File, open. Yeah, this one didn't work right. It's a 2.5 megabyte file. And it didn't close properly. I should delete it. But here's test 2 Rappa. Here's a. It doesn't have. Yes, it does have a radio. So how did I get that to work? Anyway, that's one thing I was kind of debugging the other day, like a day or so ago when I was trying to test it out. But it has 2 buttons, a dialogue. Let's preview the dialogue. 2 buttons and a radio. Exit preview. And the window is a separate preview. Just 2 buttons. Okay. Oh, another thing. There's a utility I put into the Rappa Edit, into a submenu in the Rappa Edit that lets me view the file's contents. It just uses the built-in serializer. Oops, it's on the wrong screen. There we go. And this is the file format right here. It just has a text item and a version number as a header, and then these are just the tables held in it. Note that tables are not ordered, but that was the. Let's just show a file dump of the. Okay, let's try that again. Only this time we'll show the one we just had. That was Rappa 3. And here's the contents of it. Handy little debugging tool to be able to make something like this. And it's a very brief command. All it does is deserialize it into a tree view gadget.
They serialize the XML file, right?
This can be generated as XML, yes.
No, I mean it takes the XML file and that
No.
creates the list view, right?
Actually, the save game or the save option is stored as a binary serialization format. I could have used JSON, but I didn't. I started this on a much older version of Hollywood that didn't have the JSON serializer yet. So I'm just using the built-in serializer for now. But here's all the parameters of every item that went into the file. In fact, I can even show you the source code of this easily. Just a few functions, and there it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. That's the file loader. Let's see, I don't think Oh, here's something I did a little different from the other one. I embedded the XML for the GUI right into the source code of the Hollywood script itself. This double square brace here indicates a multi-line quotes. So I was able to pass this in as a multi-line string right into the create app. I didn't do that in the other one. I kept the XML outside, but and then that's pretty much it. Okay, read file. Open file, creates a table and reads a string from the file for an 8-character cookie. That's Rappa edit. And it reads the integer from the file, which is the version number. And then it just reads in the whole table and closes the file. That's all there is to it. It's all serialized by Hollywood. All right. So that's it for the
So
file.
when you say read table from the file, reads the whole file, right?
That that was the whole program there. That was one. I didn't even have an external file in it because I was able to embed the XML. So that was a nice small little utility.
Cool.
All right, and rectangle. This has all of the methods associated with it. And here, okay, you wanted a function that could generate requester. Here's the Rappa GUI requester, Rappa GUI request. It's an error, and you cannot remove a gadget from a rectangle because there is no rectangle, because a rectangle can't hold any gadgets. So there's an error message right there from an easy requester. One line of code, nice and easy. I wish C++ could be made so easy. Maybe it can.
That's a request that comes from the system, right?
This one, yeah, the MOAI is Rappa GUI itself, and the request is a requester portion of it. So that makes things a lot nice and easy. There any more questions? Any requests that you'd like to see other parts of the program?
We have a couple in the chat.
Okay.
The first one was, and I think this would be in your opinion type of a question.
Okay.
How easy or hard do you think it is to jump into Hollywood programming for someone with no programming experience?
It's very easy with no programming experience. This is just how far I've been able to push it after years of experience. But you can actually do a lot of really simple stuff with it right out of the box. It's got a very good manual. It's got a very extensive library of routines built in to its libraries. And yeah, here, let me kill this, and then we'll just look at Hollywood's help for Rapagui, for example.
But it has a lot of examples over there that cover a lot of
Yes.
scenarios, so someone can grab an example and experiment with that.
Yes, yes, yes. And here's the documentation on all of the entire plugin of Rapagui. It's got a lot of extensive information here. And that was a pretty trivial one. This one is kind of optional, the HTML view class. On MUI, it has a HTML view class that's basically HTML version 3.0, and it's not even worth using, in my opinion, anymore, just because it's HTML3 and not even complete for that. It was an offline HTML viewer. And likewise, you can leave it out of the Linux version in case you're missing something. Okay, but you can see here there's quite a bit of documentation and a lot
That kind of
gadgets.
leads over. That kind of hits on the second question that the
Okay.
same person had about books or tutorials available online outside
Okay.
of what we see in Hollywood here, which looks quite extensive.
Yeah.
Specifically
Well,
with OS4, or does it even matter what operating system?
Except for the system class, that everything is common to all of the versions, except for the system class. I'll pull up. Let's see, where's here Hollywood. I'll pull up the main help file. Okay. System class. Okay. This is basically, I think, all the system specific stuff there for, oh, no, it isn't. It would be, where is it? Okay, here's the Amiga support library. Here's the Amiga specific stuff. AmiDoc, Amiga, open and close Amiga guide documents, AREX, list of registered applications, pub screens, front screen. This is all the Amiga specific stuff in there. Everything else, let's see, I think there's a mobile. Yeah, here's for Android and iOS. And let's see, there's a Windows support library here. Everything else is common to all the versions. They all run the same graphics chips somewhere, like Radeon card, what have you. They all have a processor. They all have a certain amount of memory. It's all common pretty much to all of them.
And you primarily go to the docs here in the product, or is there any third party site that you go to for info on Hollywood?
Let's see. Oops. This is the page I wanted. I have a few links on my GitHub repository. Okay, here's the crash course in Hollywood. It's of course part of Morph Zone, but it's kind of a brief tutorial that gets you started at least, and it has a little bit more depth on how you can get started. Let's see, I think this is on Cubic IDE. Yes, Cubic IDE. On my MorphOS box, I use Flow Studio, which comes with MorphOS SDK nowadays. But this, I think, is a little bit before that came out. So This is on Cubic. But there aren't a lot of tutorials based on. Yeah, but this is about the only one I know of actually that are not from the documentation that comes with Hollywood. But the Hollywood documentation is public. It's all on its website. It does really well. There doesn't really need to be that many tutorials about it because the documentation that comes with it's so good. Oops.
And then the last question, if I'm getting them all here, was what you're developing in Hollywood. So
Okay.
the Rappa GUI edit, that's all you,
Rappa
right?
edit, that's me.
That's all you?
That's all me, Rappa edit.
Yeah.
It's something that I've done. I was going to make it a showcase piece, but I figured if somebody's going to hire a professional Hollywood developer, they're hard enough to find as it is. They'll know me.
And then for the Rappa GUI plugin, have you been involved in its development, or is that a different effort?
No, that was Andreas Falkenhahn. He leverages a lot of open source in Hollywood. And so the Rappa GUI, these are examples, but he did all the examples. He did the plugin. As I mentioned earlier, the Amiga versions use MUI. The Windows, Mac, and Linux versions, I've got Linux up right now, use WX widgets, which is in turn a wrapper for their respective operating system gadgets. And so only the Android version has actually a specific custom done graphical user interface, and it doesn't have every single gadget in it either. So it's kind of limited on the touch screen, I guess. But yeah, I can't really put that up without switching Jitsi Meet over to my phone.
Oh, that's fine.
I don't know if it'll screen share anyway.
Yeah, let's not get that technical.
Yeah, let's not get that technical. But you can use Rappa GUI on Android. To make a standalone Android app that you can put on Google Play Store, you actually need to buy a separate compiler component called APK. I should be able to pull this up just to see.
Yeah.
Developer languages, Hollywood. Okay, here's the Hollywood website. And under purchase, there's a number of. Okay, it's APK compiler, professional and home version. The home version shows a brag screen that says, hey, this was made in Hollywood. And the professional version has no brag screen. And has a few extra features to it. But Andreas has done pretty well for himself just by covering all this territory, even leveraging all the open source that he's done.
Yeah, it's quite an effort.
Yeah, he has.
Have you done much with the mobile?
I haven't got the APK developer because I didn't want to have that and then have nothing to put on it yet. All of my code so far has just been utilities for using with Hollywood, so that is not really conducive to making a mobile app.
Right.
So I haven't gotten that. Oh, and here's RemediaOS for Mac OS. What was that again? I forget what that is. I better look that up. That could be important. Oh, I know what that is. That's just like the APK developer, but for iOS.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I remember
That's
reading that too.
RemediOS is, yeah. This is the APK compiler information. It's got a few missing
Yeah.
features in it on the home version. And then RemediOS is for iOS. The catch is with RemediOS is that you're almost on your own when it comes to making a GUI, because RapaGUI can't generate the file that the operating system expects, and it's a closed file format. So,
From Apple, really?
yeah, really? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you go to all the trouble of, but I mean, you can do a lot of things with it otherwise besides the GUI stuff. Here,
So
let me
how
pull up-
come you didn't create that presentation in Hollywood?
Because Hollywood can only support one screen at a time. I had my crib notes showing on my other screen while you were watching the slideshow.
Okay.
So, and that's something that LibreOffice on my Linux machine does very easily.
We got another question rolling in here. This
Okay.
one sounds a little more nuanced, maybe.
Okay.
The viewer says, I checked the video player sample. Is it possible to use the VA library by Aeon so GPU power can be used?
The what library?
VA library?
Video acceleration library.
Video acceleration.
Oh, video
okay.
acceleration. There are plugins that allow that. I'll pull it up on the download menu here. There's two of them that will use the graphical accelerations. Let's see. Rebel SDL will use SDL 2.0, which is definitely graphically accelerated. And the other one, and that's only 2D, and then for 3D, there's GL Galore.
Oh.
I think what they're talking about is the VA library for video hardware accelerated video playback.
Oh, no, not yet, unless the AV codec has FFmpeg is a wrapper for. But other than that, I don't think it actually shows hardware. Well, it might actually. That might be a built-in function of the respective platforms, though. I don't know if the code. Okay, it depends on the codec. Let's put it that way. There are different codecs supported, various ones. Some of them are specific to the operating systems. Others are not. Most of the ones that are not as accelerated as the ones that are.
So that sounds like a definite maybe.
Definite maybe. Depends on what platform you're on.
All right.
But it does show video. So.
Yes.
So let's see. And some of these are open source, these plugins too. I forgot to mention that. They're written mostly in C, some of them in C++. But
Are there any plugins? Oh wait, I think I see it. SQLite 3.
Yeah.
To hit database.
Oh yes. Yep, database, and then somebody has written a Hurl library that will access, that's written in Hollywood itself, that accesses what's it called? SQL. It's not MySQL, it's the other one. Postgre, yeah. They made a Hollywood library using the Hurl plugin to access a Postgre SQL database over a network. It's not an example code that comes with it, but it was mentioned on the forum. Somebody posted it to the forum.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are third-party libraries out there that someone can use, right? except those that we can see in Hollywood website.
Oh, there are other plugins? No, there haven't been many other plugins made. I started making one and it was pretty difficult, I thought, because, well, I mean, it wasn't terribly difficult. It's just my code was full of bugs and I didn't feel like fixing it. I started making an encryption file encryption plugin, and I didn't finish it ever. So, I mean, that some of these do have source code. So if you really wanted to, you could. And there is the public SDK for making plugins. Let's see, where would that be? That'd be under help. No, it's under download. Okay, the Hollywood SDK. Oh boy. Where is it? Oh, here it is, down here. Hollywood SDK contains all the C includes required to make plugins.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Andreas has been so prolific with his that most people don't feel the need to do their own, which is kind of sad actually. But if you do have some C code that you want to have accessible, you can always make a plugin out of it, and that's pretty straightforward if you just have the code already written. In fact, a lot of the plugins up here are just wrappers for C codes that already existed. Like the AHX player is a Hively tracker player code. You just wrapped it up in a plugin and it works. Supported on all operating systems. And then your FFmpeg, an older version, he took it and wrapped it up in a plugin, and here it is, AV codec. Also has the source code available. One thing that's might be a problem though is that C++ code that uses templates might be a problem because it's hard to wrap a template. It's just a header. So some environments in C++ are hard to incorporate into Hollywood. But as long as it's written in C native, then it's plenty easy to incorporate.
So is Rappa GUI like the go-to plugin for GUI?
On multi-platform GUIs, yes. But there's also MUI Royale if you want a little bit more nuanced control for the Amiga likes only.
Okay.
It's been around longer, but it allows a little bit more control. And since it's MUI specific, I planted a bug in Andreas' ear. Maybe he can add some more MUI specific features. I'm kind of holding out for the ability to embed gadgets into wrapped text because I know MUI supports it. I looked it up on the documentation and emailed it to him. So we'll see what he comes up with for MUI Royale 2.0. He thought it would be an interesting idea.
Cool.
No source code available here. Otherwise, I'd do it my own stinking self. But
the thing is that if you are going to use that, you lose the feature of porting your application to other systems.
Right. They're not very compatible with each other, though they have similar mechanisms inside. Rappa GUI runs on all operating systems except iOS, while MUI Royale is Amiga specific.
Now we got another high-tech question from the YouTube chat.
Okay.
It says, can the HTTP streamer handle DLNA, so video audio content from DLNA capable devices like Kodi can be accessed?
DLNA. Like
I think DLNA is that
It's a
streaming
media
protocol.
server System where you can have, a NAS or something
Right.
like that. where you can-
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you can play it with Kodi or VLC or whatever.
Is DLNA a protocol or is that
It is.
DLNA
Digital Living Network.
Oh, okay.
actually it gives you XML. The DLNA.
Oh, XML? You can
yeah,
use,
it returns
you can use
XML.
these in conjunction with each other then.
Then
HTTP
we-
streamer can stream video or any streamed format. It can stream audio also. But to be able to process the codec, you'd need a different, like AV codec has MP3 streaming would need AV codec. Or if you wanted to stream an OGG file, you could use the OGG Vorbis or OGG Video, OGG Theora. You can use these together with each other, yes. It just depends on what format you're streaming. Some of the, for example, Amiga I don't think has an H.264 streaming format built in, but some of these other operating systems do. In fact, you can see right here, you don't even need an OGG Vorbis or OGG Theora plugin for Android or iOS because the mobile ones have that built into their version of the player. So, okay, like a Kodi Cam, web camera, I think depends entirely on what operating system you're trying to stream to and what format it uses.
For the DLNA question, the
Yeah.
more, let's say, difficult part is because it uses SOAP protocol to exchange information, and you have to post the request in an XML file, and then it returns an XML file, and then you have to just parse it, get the URL that you need, and feed that, I expect, to the HTTP streamer, and then it is going to work.
Yeah,
That's what I expect. I haven't tried it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one thing else, I think the HTTP streamer version 1.1 added HTTPS secure protocol to it. So that will in turn require the Amiga library for
The
encryption.
AmiSSL.
Yeah, it'll support that. If it has the library, it'll support it. If it doesn't have the library, like AROS for a long time didn't, then it wouldn't be able to support it. And then a lot of MorphOS for a long time was using just OpenSSL in all of its applications individually, so Hollywood couldn't access it. But now there, I think, is a MorphOS version of AmiSSL now too, so it can. That should be on the AmiNet. So yeah, I haven't used XML parser very much. It might, it will definitely read an XML file into tables where you can edit it. I'm not sure if it will serialize it out to a HURL or HTTP streamer or not. You might just have to make your own XML, like what I've done in the Rapid Edit. I just had some recursive calls to generate the tags and then subtags and so forth. So but XML being text-based is not a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
So I guess the long and the short of it is your mileage may vary depending on how far you want to go and how much work you want to put into it. But
Yeah.
yeah. So any more questions?
I think that clears the YouTube queue.
Okay.
Anyone in the room?
Have you heard anything about the web player so we can export the application to on the web on the browser?
It
Or
doesn't.
a
It does
presentation?
not compile to JavaScript or WebAssembly yet,
Mm.
and I don't think it's planned to. But
Okay.
you can stream. I think you can export to. Okay. Here, I don't have to guess. I can just pull it up. Create video. You can make an AVI file out of an animation.
Okay, yeah.
That will work.
Yeah, I think there is that option is also in Designer.
Yeah, because the foundation is in Hollywood, and anything Hollywood can do, Designer can access.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of how much you want to add scripts to it. So you have to be fluent in Hollywood to use the full capabilities of Hollywood, but you can get the results a little quicker through Hollywood Designer sometimes if you don't have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
Last 2020, I made a slideshow in Hollywood and had it at AmiWest. Oops, it's on the wrong screen. Quit that. Maybe I'll just show you the source code. I made a template that I uploaded to the forum, and here's the final thing. I got, for each slide, I've got an OGG file, OGG Vorbis, and then I've just did all the formatting with all each slide for each, and then for the main function, just does some event handling, and yeah, there's not much to it. Waits 1 second after the audio stops. It's not actually music, it's just me talking, but same basic idea. It streams the audio. Oh, it doesn't stream the audio from the file at all. It's embedded into the slideshow. So it preloads that, and then it advances the slide 1 second after I'm done talking. So you can do. I didn't use Hollywood Designer because I didn't want to buy it. It's a little spendy for what I need it for. But yeah. Let's see. Anyway.
You don't happen to have an ARIX presentation that's updated for 2022, do you?
I do not. There hasn't been much happening with it.
I figured I was just hoping.
ARIX. Michael Schultz has been focusing most of his efforts for the Amiga scene on his little JIT for the ARM processor to run 68K code.
Well, that makes some sense.
EMU68 it's called. It requires a 64-bit ARM, but it runs really fast. So he hasn't actually done much with ARIX lately, but he will. And he's not the only one working on a similar type of... there's a similar Deadwood. Another AROS developer has been working on another Linux hybrid solution for AROS developers and stuff to team up on. I don't know why he and Michael Schultz didn't team up. But anyway, AROS has a lot of stuff going on, but seems to be splitting off into a dozen different directions, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, let's see. I probably better not show these because they don't all run in a window, so they might pop up on the wrong screen. I suppose I could just set Jitsi Meet to look at the other screen. Oh well, it's getting late. Any other questions? Whoops, did I lose audio?
Cool. Thanks, Sam. This is a great presentation. I've been looking
All
forward to
right.
seeing some Hollywood for a while.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yay. All right.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see you on the stream tomorrow, Sam.
All right. Don't know if I'll be on the stream tomorrow, but oh well.
Well, I mean, you'll be watching, I assume, right?
Oh, I might be for part of the day. Actually, Saturday? No, I'll be traveling to Texas.
Oh, okay.
So I might not be able to catch most of it. So, but thank you anyway.
Sam, are you still up in Dakota?
Sam has left the building.
Sam has left.
Sam has left the building.